All right. I am going to get started. We may or may not be having a visitor in here for Shadow Attack. I have absolutely no idea. As you can see, we got about half the class missing. Aaron contacted me this morning. He thinks he got food poisoning last night. So he may not be in the rest of the week. I don't know. Adam, I don't know. Nicholas, don't know. I don't see him there. I don't think he's there. But on Monday, I asked you to create the GUI for the test. I also asked you to create this, and we're going to go over this thing in just a little bit. I gave you the hard copy, but I am going to go over it because there's some stuff in there I think it's worth going over with you. All right? You can make your own determination as to whether or not I'm right. Yesterday, of course, we did the hands-on test. Today, we're going to go over the Chapter 12 hands-on test. I turned that back into you, and I'm going to show you what I did and what I was looking for. By and large, people did very well on this test. All right. Then we will go over that in-class data entry program. I've also emailed you two things today, and we will go over both of those as well. Remember, there is no class tomorrow because I'm Zooming with the Lewis and Clark people. That ought to be interesting too because I'm using Zoom for the first time in almost a year. And Lewis and Clark, I just found out none of their students have webcams. So I've got a feeling that he's going to try to show it kind of like on this, and they're going to have sound on their machines. That's the way it's, no joke, but that's the way it sounds. So that's what I think is going to happen. So it ought, and the guy, my counterpart over at Lewis and Clark, even said this ought to be really interesting. I don't know what their level is as far as understanding websites and the like. So what I'm doing is either it might be way too simplistic for them. I don't know, but we'll see. All right. So we will go over the chapters 12, 14, 15, and 16 written tests. And if there's any time left, we'll begin the database portion of the class. All right. Okay. So that said, let me bring up my two. So my two things for chapter 12. Now, you may or may not agree with this. And like I said, most of you did fine on the test, but I thought the first problem was a lot easier than the second one. So for the first one, and I did it the old fashioned way, some of you did it one way, some of you did it the other way. But in fact, I can't show this. I can't tape right now. So again, we are going over the data entry program. I've got a student out. He's got food poisoning. So I always tape my regular lectures. All right. So the first name has got a tag name of first name, last name, a tag name of last name, etc. I'm not going to run through all of them. That should make sense to you. What did that buy us? Well, I want to show you. And again, you've got the copy right in front of you. But notice I've got now one validation method that's called field exists. That's it. So I've got one, and for each one of those, what am I passing? I'm passing the name of that particular text box. That's all I'm passing. All right. And so that's that one, etc. Now look at how small this ends up becoming. So we've got one thing. Now all this is validating in here. The only thing it's validating is existence or non-existence. That makes sense to everybody? And notice what I said. I'm saying that what I passed in is a type text box, and I'm just going to call it TB for text box. I could call it anything. All right. But what am I doing in here? If it's blank, I'm writing my custom error message that says the entry for, and since I use tb.tag, it'll say the entry for first name or the entry for last name, etc. And then it'll say is missing input for field, and it'll have that field name. So by doing it that way, by implementing the tag property in conjunction with using something and basically setting it up as a control type, it allowed me to create one input validation method as opposed to multiple input validation methods. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So you'll notice that if I run the program, and if I leave any of them blank, it's going to come up for each one and says missing input for first name. That's the tag. the entry for text box first name, that's the tag, is missing. So if I just run through this quick and put in garbage here, now it changes to last name. Now it changes to address. Now it changes to city. Now it changes to state. And the last one, we're going to look at this one in a second. This one is set up so that the only keystrokes that it will accept are either the digits 0 through 9 or a backspace. So if I come through here, I'm typing the letter D right now, and you notice it doesn't take. But I can keep typing. Now I could put checks in there and make sure it had only 5 digits as an example, but I didn't do that. But I can't put non-numeric, I can't put special characters in there, etc. It doesn't accept them. But it does accept it accepts the backspace key. So we're going to look at that in just a second. All right. And once there is something in for everything and you click enter, it does print out all that information. All right. Also, you may or may not have noticed if you look on the screen, you didn't have to do this. I didn't ask you to. But notice now when I highlight any of the buttons, all right, I basically got a hover, and I've got a leave, a hover, and a leave, a hover, and a leave. These are just some of the things that we have not really done because so far, at least in our book, they haven't gone over any of that stuff. All right. So I'm going to take for granted, unless I hear otherwise from you, that this all makes sense because all we're doing is we're calling the field exists on everything that's in there, and we're passing in each field one at a time. All right. If any of them fail, we're just returning. And what we did too, since they're all empty, we just said in each occurrence, set the focus right there and return. All right. If we get down to the bottom, now everything worked. So I just build a string where I put in the first name, a blank space, the last name, a carriage return, the address in a carriage return, the city, comma, space, the state, space, and the zip code. Does that make sense? All right. And then we just print that out. And after we print it out, I call clear all. And again, all clear all does is it clears out all these text boxes. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 statements that do clearing, and then it sets the focus right here. All right. So what's new? Well, we just went over the field exists. That's not new. So I'm not going to go over that again. But this, and the clear, I don't think I have to go over. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things where we're clearing it out. Remember, there's different ways that you can clear this. You can say textbox.firstname equals string.empty. I think there's even a, let's see, I think there's even like a dot equals where we could have done that. All right. Those are 3 ways that you can do the same thing. So you can do it like this. You can do it the way we've been doing it, or you can do it like this. Now, are there other ways? There probably are even other ways you can do it other than that. I like this one, and I said this to you before, because it's the least amount of typing. If you don't agree with that, you feel free to use one of the other ones. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this is the dot equals, the one that I said that you could use. That's the way you must compare strings when you are using the Java programming language. So you'll see the dot equals again, and that's why I just decided to bring it up so you'd hear about it right now. All right, so the new stuff is this. Not the exit we've already had, but it's this. So this is a key press event. What does that mean? That means, did you press a key? Now, you're not going to see it in here, but I do want you to see this. I want to run this again. And notice if I put in here, Jeff, and I hit enter now, I'm hitting enter. It's still giving me that message, but it's moved down to the next field. So this next routine that we're going to talk about allows you to hit the enter key. We've already learned how to change the tab order with the tab order. All right, but this, some people just like to be able to hit enter and keep going through here. And this would allow you to do that. All right. So I'm just going to clear and quit here. All right. So one thing about this, if you notice, I wanted you to see it. I'm going to come over to here. I'm just going to click on this one right here, and I'm going to click the lightning bolt. And notice it's got the key press event. See that? I manually typed that in. We could have called it anything we wanted to, but notice it is not called text box first name key press. It's called text box inputs underscore key press. Key press is the name of the event, but notice it's implemented here. It's also implemented here. It's also implemented here. It's also implemented here and here and here. So we gave it the same name because it's doing the same thing every time. And we gave it the same name in there, and what that caused to have happen was in our, wrong one, our designer file, it actually put that line, it's in here someplace, that it basically set up, so somewhere in here, it set up the event for us. So there's different ways, again, that this could conceivably had been done. All right, so let's take a look at the code for that, all right? Again, you've got the hard copy. You don't have to write this up. All right, I put this in there for your own edification, just so you knew that there were other things that we had not talked about that you can possibly put into a program. So what this does is it checks to see if the user has hit the enter key. What is 13? 13 is basically the character, the single character that's associated with the enter key. How did I know that? All right, I had to go back and look in the Unicode character set and find out the character number that was associated with the enter key. Now notice, even though it's 13, that's a single character. So key char means key character. Don't worry, 13 is just a number they gave to it. It's you hitting the enter key. Now, when you do that, you've got to do a few things here. First of all, you may or may not have noticed, this is the first time we're using this. See that object sender? The sender is who hit, where were you, for lack of better words, when the enter key was hit. That's the sender. So you want to send it from where you currently are to the next field. Does that make sense? Again, that's why you want to make sure if you're going to implement this, you also want to implement the tab order, because if you tab in one order and you hit enter in the other order, you're going to confuse the heck out of your end user. All right? So to do that, though, we made this string, and if you make it a string, if you make it a string, sender.name doesn't return a string. It doesn't understand that. So you have to cast it as type text box. So you've got to take the sender and make it a text box which has a name property on it. And then we're saying here, notice, so if you hit enter, we just do a switch. If you're on first name, all right, set the focus to the last name. If you're on last name, set it to address. Address, set it to city. City, set it to state. I'm sorry, address to city, city to state, state to zip code, and zip code to your button. Does that make sense to everybody? And again, you all have hard copies of that you can take a look at. All right. And then the last one that's in here, and notice I couldn't remember how to do it. So I went in and looked it up online. All right. Now, there's a couple things that are in here. It says, shows the following URL here as well as for another solution. Well, this is doing the zip code. But one of the things that we could do, you're going to see it soon. I think it's discussed before the end of the semester, is you can use, you guys did this last semester, what are called regular expressions. All right. There is a regular expression handler that will handle. So for instance, if I create a regular expression, it's going to look something like this. It looks a little weird. 5 and then parenthesis dash backslash D4. All right, that's a regular expression pattern. This means starts with. This means ends with. So the caret there means start with this. The dollar sign here means end with that. In between it, this says I can have any 5 digits. And then since this is in parens, optionally, I can have a hyphen and 4 digits. So if we'd have put that in, or if we'd have put in just a regular expression pattern rather for the 5 digits, then we could have checked, and if you put in more than 5 or less than 5, we could have caught that as well. That wasn't the idea behind this exercise. The idea was to show you that you can constrain your input, and that's what we've done here. That's what I wanted you to understand. But virtually every programming language that we teach here, in fact, everyone we teach here, JavaScript, C#, Node when you're using JavaScript on the server side, and Java and getting into Android, they all have regular expression capability. All right? And typically with regular expressions, not always, but typically you're searching a string for the presence or the absence of something. All right? So when you look in here, this looks a little funky. Those are the characters on your keyboard 0 through 9. Okay? And this says, so if you press those, or the 8 is the backspace key. Like 13 was the enter key, 8 is the backspace key. All right, you had to look that up. So if either one of those, if it's this or this, we don't have to do anything. Does that make sense? It's legal. So this handled thing that's in here is false. And what's E? That's the key press event argument. So again, one of the reasons I gave you this is the first chance, especially when we've been working with buttons. We've never really done anything with the sender or with the arguments, but this allows you to see both of them in action, so to speak. All right. You may or may not agree, but basically it's a pretty simple example. All right. So again, if we put in a number between 0 or 9, or we hit the backspace key, do nothing. Otherwise, handle it by not allowing it to happen. All right. What it's doing, for lack of better words, is it's creating the equivalent of what's referred to as an input mask on that field. And it's saying, I'll accept any digit, and I'll accept you hitting the backspace key, but I won't accept anything else. All right. And then we have our regular show message thing. And this was the stuff. So notice when you hover over something, we're setting the back color to green. And when you don't head over it, when you leave it, it goes back to the regular color. Couple things about this. Sender, that's the current button that you're either hovering over or leaving. But sender.backcolor doesn't make any sense to the system. So you've got to take that sender and cast it as a type button, because button sender has a back color to it. So again, this just says if you hover over a button, make that button green. When you stop hovering over it, I wanted it to go back to its normal color. And what is that? How did I find out system colors.control? What the heck is that? Well, what I did was I went back to here, clicked on this. It could click on any button, went back to here, and looked under the back color. All right, on the button. I don't know why it's still showing me that, but I wanted to make sure that and I looked it up to guarantee it, but that number or that color was system colors.control. Control is basically the default color. All right, so for instance, buttons, the default color is what? Grayish. Text box, the default color is white, etc. Does all that make sense? Questions on any of that? All right, it's 9:15. I'm going to give you a break for 15 minutes. All right, let's come back at 9:30, and we're a little bit ahead, and that's good. So we'll start doing some database stuff. We'll get the stuff ready today. Now, am I right in that every one of you who's in this room right now, you were all, well, except you, of course, you were all able to download the XAMPP product when we did this last week? Because the others, you won't be able to work with what we're about to do if you haven't. So if you weren't here for that, or you need help with that, then see me during the break, all right? Yes. That's what we're going to do after the break. All right.